Excel has a very valuable function that helps you calculate date differences. It's called DATEDIF, but there's something very strange about it. If you go to the Formulas tab and take a look at the date and time functions, you will not find DATEDIF. It's not there. If you press the FX button, which is another way to track down functions, if you go into the date and time category, you do not find DATEDIF. Oddly enough, if you're using the Mac version of Excel, you will find this function with documentation. So that's a bit strange. You'll also notice something different. If you type this function, unlike most other functions, and here too, note you don't see it in the list, but as we type this, if it's a normal function, at this point, as soon as we put in the left parenthesis, we'll get those pop-up tips below this that give us some clue as to what to put in next. All this does for us is confirm in a slightly vague way that the function appears to be valid. So what do we put in here? We're trying to calculate the difference between these two dates. If it's simply a number of days difference, we could subtract the two cells and get there pretty fast without DATEDIF. But let's show some of the variations that we could be using here. DATEDIF begins by putting in the starting date, comma, and the ending date, right here, comma. And then one of 6 different entries. They're displayed over here in column E. Whichever one of these we use, it must be within double quotes. Now, as you look at the dates there, it represents about a 3-year period. Not quite 3 years, but almost 3. If we want to display years here, double quote Y, double quote, enter. Now, it's not 3 years yet, so this calculation is just like sort of an anniversary date. We could do it that way. We actually haven't reached the date. We're only a few days away, about a week away. But sometimes we want to know that. How many months has it been here? We'll change that to an M. And it's 35 months. Almost 36, but not quite. It's 35 months. Now, the remaining 3 entries are all a little bit different, and they allow us to, in different ways, calculate the amount of time beyond a boundary. So if someone were to say, how many months has it been since the last yearly anniversary? We put in YM. How many months has it been since the last yearly anniversary? Probably going to be 11. Almost that 3rd anniversary, but it's 11 months after the last anniversary. How many days has it been since the last anniversary? That's going to be about 358 or something like that, because we're almost at that 3rd year mark. It's 357. So there we are. How many days has it been since the last year? And the last example there, how many days has it been since the last monthly anniversary? And it's 23 days. So you can see in different ways how this is likely to be used. A better use of this might be over in column H here, and we need to know the number of service years. And this also would apply for a situation where you're trying to calculate someone's age. You probably know that putting in age in a column should never be pure numbers. It should always be a formula. We want this to be accurate all the time. So we can use the DATEDIF function in combination with the today function to make sure that this entry is always accurate. We want to count service years here. Equal DATEDIF, left parenthesis. Here's our starting date, comma. We want to compare it with today. And as I'm typing this, it's April 17th of 2013. So today is followed by 2 parentheses, comma. And if we want to track years, double quote, Y, double quote. Right parenthesis, control enter, and it's 17 years. Double clicking here, we've got the other entries as well. If we have quite a few entries here, every time we open this file, some of these possibly will have changed because we're always using today's date to make the comparison. And let's say this is always up to date. And again, imagine if this said birth date and this said age, you would always have the accurate age here to the day with these kinds of calculations. Now, there's one bug in DATEDIF. If you don't use MD, you're probably never going to encounter it. Here it is in the list down here. Here's a series of dates, January 29th of 2013, then the following 3 days, the 30th, 31st, and the 1st. And we're going to be comparing these dates with March 2nd. So in this example here, what are we doing? Here's our starting date of January 29th. Here's our ending date. How many days has it been since the last monthly anniversary? And the reason this happens is because of the February issue. There is no February 29th of this year, so when was that first monthly anniversary? Well, I guess you could say it's March 1st, which is the first day after the missing February 29th. So we get a 1 there. But here we get a 0, and then suddenly we get a -1. Now, I've only seen this happen with the MD option, and so I tend not to use that anyway. And I think it only happens in the February time frame here too. But all of the uses of DATEDIF seem to work beautifully, and it's particularly handy, not only in the examples that we saw here, but perhaps better, and I use this in a number of different workbooks, to calculate service years or birth dates, simply by comparing a date with today's date and then using the Y entry. But it's a very valuable tool, but you won't find documentation within the Excel help system at all, unless you're using Excel for the Mac.